Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heart Mind Happy Hour. I'm your host, Holly Copeland, and run the Heart Mind Alchemy Lab community, as well as a coach and own the business Heart Mind Alchemy, and really focus on consciousness, meditation, technology, and this beautiful intersection of all of them, which feels like a up and coming interest area for a lot of people. This new book, Spirit Tech, that just came out last week, which is a book that brings together those themes as well. I'm just getting into, but I'm super excited today to have Max Newlon with us. Welcome, Max.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah. So Max is, this is really fantastic that he's on the show today. And I think anybody is watching is just going to be very excited to have his wonderful wisdom with us. Max has an incredible background as a researcher and neuroscientist. He first started out at University of Connecticut for cognitive science. So there's that science background, and then worked at Massachusetts General Hospital in Beth Israel as a research coordinator, and then went on to Harvard and studied human development and psychology. Too bad you couldn't pick a more prestigious university, Max. And then from there went on to be president of BrainCo, and we'll get into what BrainCo does and their research, but an incredible background. And so I'm really excited to pick his brain about what BrainCo is doing, their device Focus Calm that I've been testing out for the last week and a half since I got it, and have seen a lot of people posting about this device. So it will be really fun to get into that, and also just talk more generally about Max's meditation practice and how he thinks that these types of devices can support our evolving, awakening consciousness. So I'm really excited to dive in. So again, welcome, Max, and thank you so much for being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. So I think a really nice place to start is just for you to talk a little bit about your background, how you ended up here in the place that you're sitting. And obviously all of this world is of great interest to you, or you wouldn't be here. So I'd just love to hear if you'd share a bit of your story and background.
Looking back, it's always really clear. Hindsight is 20/20. So I'm able to tell a nice, coherent story. When you're in the middle of it, it doesn't always feel like the next step is going to match. But as the story goes, when I was, I guess, 6 years old, my mom got a phone call from my first grade teacher, who was a little concerned because they found me meditating outside during recess. And I have no idea what possessed me to do this. My dad posits that it was my interest in Power Rangers, and maybe somehow I saw them meditating or something. But anyways, got into martial arts, and a big part of martial arts is the mental training. The quality of your martial arts is often defined by how well you can master the mental side of things, which is true for almost everything we do, but it's really explicit in martial arts. You meditate at the beginning of every lesson. So started to get more interested in martial arts and the meditative aspect, the spiritual side. And I guess the core interest was there are hidden possibilities or hidden potential or untapped potential inside our minds. And, you see these Kung Fu movies of these people flying around and doing these really magical things. And at least in the folklore, it's because they had mastered some mental ability and it gave them these special powers. And that was very interesting to me as a young man. So I started looking to meditation and what is possible? What experiences could I be having if I was able to master what's going on in my mind? And learned a few different meditation practices that I have stuck with for, I guess, over 10 years now. And the interest in meditation and the mind and how things worked, philosophy and psychology kind of mixing together, was really well represented in cognitive science, which kind of set me on that path, at least academically. And then, went on to the things that you were describing, like doing the research on meditation on the brain, going to Harvard, and then eventually finding my way to BrainCo.
Wow. I love that your story started when you were like 6 years old, meditating on the playground.
I know. I
That's
wish there was a picture. I wish there was a picture. That'd be
that's a very unique way to start out. Not many people can say that. I mean, it was you could tell that your path was laid out here at such a young age, right?
Yeah, something was set in motion.
Something was set in motion. So then when you went on to UMass and you were studying cognitive science, were you really studying meditation specifically, or what was your research focus?
So I did end up doing my thesis, my undergrad thesis. I was in the honors program. They make you do some sort of research study on the impact of mindfulness practices on anxiety and depression. And I basically just did a meta-analysis of all the studies that were out there, kind of coming up with, this conclusion that yes, meditation works, right? Something we take for granted now. During my undergrad, though, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of made up on the spot during a job interview that I wanted to go get a PhD in clinical psychology. And then from that point on, I convinced myself that, yes, this is what I want to do, which is still like really interesting to me. It's the concept of working one-on-one with someone, again, with their mind for better well-being, kind of unlocking their potential, et cetera. But I ended up working at this really interesting company called NICABM, and the full name is a mouthful. National Institute for the Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine. Really incredible company. I worked there for years, both while I was at UConn and afterwards, but they would put on webinars kind of like this with leading mind-body practitioners. Stephen Porges with the polyvagal theory. We had him on. This was, I guess, 10 years ago when his stuff was still new. People like Ron Siegel, Dan Siegel, Rick Hansen, Tara Brock. And we had this one person on, her name was Sarah Lazar, and she was conducting fMRI neuroscience research on the impact of meditation on the brain. So after I graduated UConn, I got an introduction from the president of NICABM, and I went to her lab and volunteered there for free for a few months. And when a position opened up in her lab, I joined their lab and helped them conduct research on how meditation and yoga impact the brain.
Oh, wow. I didn't know your connection to Sarah Lazar's lab specifically, which I find really fascinating, because in the webinars that I give to people, that I teach them about the benefits of meditation, she's always who I cite first and foremost in terms of research on the benefits of meditation.
Yeah, I worked with Sarah for 3 years. We published, or I helped conduct some studies that got published around how mindfulness improves people's understanding of themselves and processing of certain environments, especially challenging environments, and how people can perform better in challenging environments. And then actually just in the past few weeks, a paper that I was helping her on is getting published, which is really cool, about the neural correlates of ego development, which is, I guess, a Western conceptualization of the stages of development, kind of like enlightenment. So like in Western psychology, ego development are the stages of growth that people go throughout their life. And the top stage sounds a lot like how people will describe enlightenment, or at least some aspects of it. And so that really grabbed my attention. And that study was looking at long-term meditators, long-term yogis, and their progress on this Western scale of ego development, and what were the neurocorrelates in their brain that were associated with higher levels of development. And one of the conclusions was, and this makes perfect sense, the area of the brain associated with processing yourself and other. Where is yourself versus where is the other, and what is that boundary? That part of the brain was significantly different in people with higher stages of ego development. And that actually was part of the inspiration for why I went to Harvard. I wanted to keep on studying this kind of scale, and like, what does this mean for leadership? What does this mean for people's individual lives, et cetera?
Oh, wow. Fascinating. And so just to go understand just a little bit more about that fascinating paper. I can't wait to see it. I'd love a preprint if you can send one. What area of the brain? So was it a lessened? I mean, you would expect that there's a reduction in self and other, right? There's
Yeah.
merging of self and other into more of a unified consciousness way of viewing the world. Where did you see that in the brain?
So
Is
the
that
area of
true?
the brain's called the precuneus, and it's involved in the processing of self and other. The analysis we were doing, this was, I guess, 8 years ago or so. So you'll have to forgive me. I forget if it was larger or smaller. Sometimes it goes in the direction that you wouldn't think. But yeah, that was the area of the brain that was significantly different. But those stages, to just like a quick kind of recap of this field of study, you're really young. Everything is about you. You're really protective. Crime and punishment is like the law of the land. Everything is black and white. You're beholden to your impulses. You have an impulse. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to follow through with it. You have no control. You're subject to your impulses. And then the next stage, what one of the researchers in this field, Robert Keegan, would call the socialized mind, is where you can make those impulses your object. You can take they're an object for you. You can look at them, and so you're not beholden to them. You're not controlled by them, but you are subject to your socialization, what other people think of you, what are the norms of the tribe that you're in, what you should be wearing, what you should be thinking, how you should be talking. And a lot of people live their life here forever, and that's fine. The next stage, you can take object of that socialization and go, this is how my culture works. This is what people expect of me. And instead, you are run by your own internal value system. It's called the self-authoring mind, right? You are authoring the world around you. You make meaning not by what other people think, but you make meaning based on your own values and your concept of the world. So you can take that object. You can take the socialization as an object, but you're subject to your own system. And then this kind of higher stages, you can take that as an object, and you can look at your own meaning-making system and understand that it is just one concept of the world, but because it's a system, it's limited. And really, any system we create is going to be limited by its own definition. And so one of the cool little analogies would be, if there was a tribe, the chief should have self-authoring mindset, where they can set the rules, they can set the boundaries, they're kind of leading the tribe. People in the tribe, it's okay if they have a socialized mindset. They can be a really good member of the tribe by following the rules and appreciating the rituals and kind of following along and making meaning of what other people think of them. And then the higher stage would be like the elders of the tribe that are communicating with the other tribes and can take perspective of the rules and the rituals and the culture of which people live in, and see how they all kind of interact between the tribes and how this dialogue is constantly going. And there probably is not some ultimate stage to be at, but it's about this constant evolution. And yeah, that was the concept that was really interesting to me. And that was the theory that we saw that difference on, about people having higher and higher stages and the changes in the brain.
Oh, that's fascinating. And just listening to you talk about and thinking about how those Western concepts of ego kind of map onto the Eastern concepts of ego. And it also just makes me think about the kind of what you're talking about sounds like a metacognitive state. You kind of come out and out till you're metacognitive about what's happening in the whole tribe. You're able to see from this wider view, or having awareness of awareness, really, in that way, right?
Yeah, like when you meditate, one technique might be you're basically practicing taking object of things that you may have been subject to in the past, whereas before you're reacting to your environment. Or respond, and you're no longer subject to it if you can make it an object.
Yeah. Huh. Fascinating. That's amazing. It'll be great research to see, and really adds to this kind of evolving, what seems like there's not that much out there Judd Brewer and Dan Brown have some of this, but this evolving research on awakening and what are the neural correlates of awakening.
Yeah.
And that'll be a great addition to that. So thank
I
you.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. So before I dive into BrainCo and the device that you've been working with, FocusCalm, I'd love to just have you talk a little bit about your personal meditative practice. I think you're really unique as, not only the, developer of a headset, but you have your own rich, personal practice. And I think it really adds a lot to you speaking about these because you can bring in your own experience. So for everybody watching, can you just tell us about your own practice?
Yeah, it's really funny because like part of my life is about this company and this startup and its technology, and it's really obviously really important work. And then my practices are like could be seen as kind of off the deep end, but they're really special to me. They're really near and dear to me. I'm still appreciating them more and more and getting better and better understanding them. I think that I'm at the point in my practice where I recognize there's just so much I don't know, and the more that I practice these traditions, the more I can understand about the traditions, and I'm sure I will never get to the bottom of it, and that's the journey. But the explicit kind of practices that I do, well, the first one that I learned that I've stuck with for a while, the tradition is called Kunlun, Kunlun. And it was kind of formed by this man also named Max, who studied all these different traditions and kind of figured out what was the root essence of the improvements that he was seeing in himself and his students, and distilled it into a few different practices. Some listeners might be familiar with the Bon tradition, Tibetan Buddhist and Bon, and maybe some Taoist influence in there too. So some of the practices are like that. And some of the practices are from what's called the Mao Shan tradition, which I guess is maybe a bit more not so talked about tradition. What will I say about them? I will say that they are fantastic practices. They are incredibly powerful. One of the lessons is you have to respect any practice that you do. If you were going to go to the gym and start doing barbell training and squatting 200 pounds, if you don't respect the practice, you can get hurt. I think similarly with lots of the mind practices, you're not necessarily going to get hurt in the same way, but it's important that you respect how to use the practice in the right way. And I think even in meditation, it's important to do things. And I think that's why we have a structure to things. I think that's why some of the technology with FocusCalm is so great, because it gives you a structure and guidance, and you can kind of level up in a certain way. But yeah, really, really powerful practice, really great. Lots of interesting insights that come from doing that. And then the other two that I regularly practice, one is a Hawaiian tradition taught by this guy named Harry Uhani Jim. He's a kahuna. I've met with him online a few times, read his book a ton of times. I'm doing my first in-person workshop with him in a couple of weeks. I'm super excited. And the Hawaiian traditions are about cultivating positive beliefs and understanding the world around you through forgiveness and gratitude. I think are really key parts, and just being at ease. And the things that I've learned from that tradition is it doesn't have to be hard. My conception was like, okay, it's like me against enlightenment. Like I have to go and get this thing, and it's going to be this hard journey. And it's sometimes it feels like that. And a lot of the Hawaiian traditions are so easy. It's just like so much about joy and happiness and like just being at ease and feeling good. And so I really, really like those practices. And then the last one is a introspection practice, basically a series or a collection of different questions that you can ask yourself to get deeper and deeper into the structures that hold your beliefs in place. And that tradition is called Holigral, Holigral. I've done a few retreats, Holigral retreats, which are really, really fascinating. They all these traditions, and I think this is true of most traditions, you get to a point where there's just some sort of like spark of hilarious insight about yourself or the world around you. You just kind of burst out laughing, and you have like a new appreciation for yourself and the world or other people. And there seems to be some commonality. I'm sure there's some reason why I'm attracted to those three things, but those are the practices that I hold with me and continue to do.
Beautiful. I'm struck by, those are not kind of the traditional Vipassana insight. I mean, they're pretty esoteric. It strikes me. I mean, so it's very fascinating. I'm curious, the Kunlun, is that how you pronounce it? Is it a direct path practice? I mean, I'm a little familiar with Bon tradition, and has its roots in Dzogchen. So I'm just kind of curious, how would you describe it? Where does it fit?
So it's considered what's called a water path. So fire path tradition would be about Kundalini practices, alternating nostril breathing, really forceful things where you're trying to get the energy to do a certain thing in order to unlock some sort of mental state. And in the water path traditions, it's all about letting go and no mind. So you don't really have to do much. So it's a direct transmission from the teacher, and you learn those practices. And a lot of what ends up happening is kind of like these spontaneous awakenings, spontaneous laughter, spontaneous release of tension. They're a lot of fun, and they're really active. The traditions where you're sitting a lot and really kind of holding on tight and really, really focused. They're a bit more effortful. I guess all of the things that I practice are not like that at all. All the things that I practice are more about joy and happiness and letting go and letting things flow a bit more. So I don't think I have quite enough understanding of the taxonomy of all the practices to know exactly where to put it, but I hope that gives you a little bit of sense of what it's like.
Yeah, it sure does. And those things resonate with me as well. The practices I tend to gravitate to are more of the no mind letting go path than the fire practices. So appreciate very much. I'm intrigued to learn more. So thank you for sharing that. So let's dive in a little bit to BrainCo Tech. How did you end up shifting to BrainCo? And then tell us a little bit about the device you created, FocusCom.
Yeah. So I have to tell you about how I joined BrainCo, because there's, I think, some important things to consider for people in the space, both neurotech space, entrepreneurial space, and just kind of like life decision space. I got some great advice, so I want to make sure that I pass that on. So after I graduated, I really wanted to go into leadership development, apply these concepts of ego development in the workplace. I thought that would be a good place to make money and also have an impact on people's lives. And it certainly does. Leadership development is, I'm appreciating it more and more now as a leader, the importance of leadership development. And so I had these job offers from these leadership development companies, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I had interviewed with this other company called BrainCo. There was about 15 of them. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to help them. I wasn't really sure what the path was. All I knew was that the CEO was super ambitious, and had a really, really big vision for what could be true for neurotech. And I got this great advice from one of my best friends. He said, those leadership development companies, they will be here next year or in 1 year. And if you don't like the startup, you can quit and go join them. But if you don't join the startup now and it takes off, you're going to be kicking yourself for missing the boat. And that made sense to me. So even though it wasn't really sure exactly what it was going to be, I could sense, I made a pro and cons list. I don't know if I ever told anyone this. I made a pro and cons list, and I could just feel myself like a Ouija board being pulled towards BrainCo, but I had some resistance. And so I asked myself, what am I afraid of? What will be the worst part about joining BrainCo? And the answer I came up with was it was going to completely change who I was. And I was worried. I had the sense that was going to happen. And it totally did, jumped right into the deep end of the startup. learned a lot. You learn a lot in a startup. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to take responsibility. No one's going to tell you what to do. No one's there to hold your hand. Like, you have to make the path yourself. And it was good to jump into that and get the leadership experience that I will need one day if I ever do want to work in leadership development. But yeah, I joined them, 15 people. I joined as a research scientist, helped them with their neurofeedback algorithms, and set up their first research studies. That was 15 people in 2016. So 4.5 years later, there's 200 of us. And my job now is I'm the president for the US company.
Wow. Wow. 4 years. Look at that.
Yeah.
And 200 of you versus 15 when you came on.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. A lot of growth.
A lot of growth. Yeah. Cool. I'm guessing you don't regret your decision whatsoever.
No, it was, oh my God, I can't imagine. I mean, I am sure that I would have had a great time doing whatever I ended up doing, but this was a wild, wild ride for sure. And I feel like we're just getting started. Like, now with Focus Calm, things are starting to ramp up. We just launched the product, 4.5 months ago.
Yeah.
Really excited about what the future holds.
Excellent. Me too. Okay, so let's dive into Focus Calm, this device. So folks, this is the device. Like I said, I've been testing it for about a week and a half. So tell us let's just start by maybe the sensors that it has and and what's the algorithm, just kind of give us the stats on it.
Sure. Yeah. So we're using 3 sensors. They're all frontal regions of the brain place. So FBZ, FB1, FB2. We're using 3 sensors, but it's only single channel, which some people are going, really, single channel? It's a fair question, but the ingenuity, I would say, that I will give credit to our engineers for, is in the algorithm. So I guess first things first, the signal quality is super, super high. We did some third-party lab testing against some like medical grade EEG devices, and we had a 95% raw signal and correlation match with those devices. So really, really high quality raw signal. And then on the algorithm side, we asked ourselves, what are we interested in measuring? I was talking to Cody Rao about this too, because he also asked this question. He's like, the guy about all the different devices and everything like this. And so he and I were talking about this. The thing that we're trying to measure is most akin to cognitive workload. I guess that's like the more scientific way to talk about what we're trying to measure. In a user scenario, what that really means is, does your mind look like it's at ease, or does your mind look like it's processing a lot of information and it's working really hard? That's what we're interested in measuring for our use case, which I'll describe.
Yep.
So on the algorithm side, instead of relying on frequency band powers like alpha power versus beta power, etc., we're using an entirely different approach. And I'll describe it like this. When you use frequency bands, so let's say you have delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma, and you're looking at the power of these frequency bands, we could say you have 5 features that you're playing with. Let's say that you're using NASA's engagement algorithm, which we used in a research study with MIT. We got some really, really, really great results, which means that these algorithms are good. The engagement algorithm from NASA is beta power divided by theta power plus power of alpha. So there's 3 features and then some simple arithmetic to understand engagement. 3 features. Instead of using those frequency band buckets, what we're doing is looking at the raw signal. So the really kind of chaotic raw EEG signal. You guys have ever seen a raw EEG trace? And we're looking at over 1,000 features per second in this raw signal. And then we asked 100 people to do a bunch of deeply relaxing exercises and looked at the raw signal. Asked those people to do really high cognitive workload, maybe stressful tasks, looked at the raw signal, and we put that data, give that data to this AI, and we ask it to figure out what are the features out of those 1,000 features in the signal, what are the features that matter for classifying if someone's brain truly looks like it's in this relaxed at ease state, or it truly looks like it's in this high cognitive workload, effortful, kind of stressed state. And it gives us back this algorithm. And that's what we're using. So we're putting our assumptions aside about, is it alpha? Should it be alpha? Should it be beta? Should it be theta? Putting the assumptions aside and just letting the data tell us, what do those states truly look like based on this, this AI and the raw signal. And that's what, we use in Focus Calm to give you your Focus Calm score, where 0 means your brain looks really, really active, high cognitive workload, and 100 means your brain looks really, really at ease, very, very relaxed.
Great. I think that's a very clear description. And so just to kind of recap, rather than kind of making some a priori assumptions and putting, a boundary on alpha, beta, and theta, and which is going to really restrict, what data you're actually looking at if you're thinking about it in terms of a linear regression or something like that.
Yeah.
Typical way of analyzing data. And instead, you're letting the computer like free form across all the possible ways that it could analyze and look at this data.
Yeah.
And allowing it to really use that intelligence through machine learning, presumably, to do that work.
Yeah. It'd be like a top-down approach where we're saying, you're telling the algorithm, like the engagement algorithm, you're telling the algorithm what to look for is top-down. And what we're doing is bottom-up. We're letting the algorithm tell us what are the things that are actually true in the signal when you're in these. Yeah.
So the strength of that is that your predictive power should be much greater, because you're able to really finesse and nuance what an easeful mind looks like in a much better way.
Yeah.
Stronger way.
Yeah. So like some of the studies out there using frequency band algorithms, they have like a 75% classification accuracy, which means 75% of the time they know if you're in high cognitive workload or low cognitive workload. Whereas our machine learning algorithm has like a 95% classification accuracy. So 95% of the time, we're going to get this right. Your score is going to reflect your mental state really accurately. And that's not to poo-poo or say anything bad about the frequency bands. In fact, a lot of people like the frequency band algorithms. They're easy to conceptualize and understand what each band means and make sense of them and do more experiments with themselves. And I think that's awesome. Like more power to using those bands. But again, our pursuit is simplicity, ease of use, and being direct.
Right.
And in that way, we can accomplish it with our model.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I come from an ecological background and worked with machine learning algorithms in the ecological science that I was doing. And I always found that the machine learning was superior for the reasons that you described. And the one hard point would be the question I'm about to ask you, which is, people naturally want to be able to say, okay, well, what alpha theta power represents a quiet mind in your model? And I'm assuming you can't answer that because it's kind of a black box, the way machine learning AI algorithms work. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that looking at a raw EEG trace, there are 1,000 important features that we're looking at, and they span your whole raw EEG signal. So, if someone said, is alpha important for your algorithm? Yes, there's hundreds of features between 8 and 12 hertz that we're looking at that are important for our algorithm. Is theta yes, the whole thing is important for us to understand. Are you really in a high cognitive workload or at ease state, that focus calm state?
Yeah, but there's no specific one that you can kind of point to where, the research shows this, and so does your algorithm. You really can't make those direct correlations, right?
Yeah, the only thing we do, when you go to sample testing, so you give the algorithm, you put in data into the model or into the AI, and it gives you this model, and then you save some data, and what that data should say. How the algorithm should classify that data, and you run it through it to see if it can properly classify And that's where that 95% match comes from. So we had this data and we know for sure these people are in high cognitive workload or at ease states of mind because of the tasks they were doing and their self-report and kind of triangulating the truth of their state. And then we give it to the algorithm and it tells us, with 95% classification accuracy, yes, like the algorithm is doing its job. It is telling us what state these people are in with really high accuracy.
Great. Fantastic. And you could look at those people and look at that data and be like, yeah, there's some, as you pointed out, they're in more, they have more theta or more alpha or things like that.
Yeah, you could. I guess, you could. We, that's not part of the model that we use, but I guess, you could go back and see, what are, according to the traditional frequency band metrics, what are the ones that happen to be popping out?
Yeah.
It would be correlational, it may not even hold true for all of our subjects.
Yeah.
May just see some instances of, let's just say, more theta or more alpha, but that might not always be true.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question about the sensors. So you use the free 3 frontal sensors, and I'm curious why you chose not to, what the conversation was around other possibilities for parts of the brain to measure, and kind of how you ended up with those 3.
Yeah. So again, our North Star was ease of use, accessibility. Reducing the number of sensors you're using can reduce the complications of either getting high enough quality signal, worrying about impedance at the different electrode sites or sensor sites. It also reduces the cost. So for example, the headband is $199. So it comes in at the lower end of the pricing structure in the market. So, when you combine our algorithm with our signal quality and our pursuit of ease of use, accessibility, and price, the conclusion we ended up with was we can get this done with 3 sensors at the frontal regions.
Yeah.
Adding more sensors, you can do more for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in the future we explore more sensors, but for this model, we wanted it to be affordable, really easy to use. And if it can accomplish the goal we're interested in from an algorithm point of view, or from a detection point of view, a training point of view, then we want to make sure all those things are aligned in the right balance.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it is a pretty compelling price point to come in at $199, for a headband like this. So I can see that. And I also just have to say that I was impressed. I've, tried a number of different headsets, and I'm just impressed with the form factor. Like, it feels really nice and solid. It doesn't feel flimsy or cheap. It has this like really beautiful feel and aesthetics for those of us who kind of like, I don't know, iPhones, like appreciate aesthetics. I really feel like it has a nice aesthetic. I just wanted to point that out. Feels good in your hands.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So who is your primary audience? Like, if you were to describe, what your big vision for this product is, that it would really help people. Can you talk about who your target market is and what you're really trying to achieve?
So, their brains. So we have features that support people who want to do their own experiments and test. We have features that support people who want a really guided experience. And so we have programs which are curated content of meditations, neurofeedback games, executive function training tasks that target your memory and your attention, et cetera, that help people towards a specific goal, like reducing their stress, improving their performance at work or in sports, getting ready to fall asleep more quickly, et cetera. So what we've done is curated content to give people the desired result and try to be objective. So what is the best content we could possibly put in here? What is the best style of content? We have breathing content from one of our content producers named Dana Santis, who works with all these professional athletes on proper biomechanics of breathing. And we saw this massive benefit from those types of practices. So those are in the app. see lots of benefit, obviously, from meditation. So those are in the app. Content from sports psychologists, those are in the app. These like challenging exercises that get your brain going, those are in the app. So it's for people who want a guided experience. It's for people who want to explore, people who want a mental edge. We work with a lot of elite level athletes, like United States Olympic team for weightlifting, United States team for bobsled. A lot of F1 drivers are using the product through our partner, Formula Medicine. We have some other Olympic teams around the world that are using the product. Corporations are using it for workplace wellness. And then on the direct to consumer side, a lot of people who have their own wellness practice but want to apply it. I think one of the things that sets us apart is you can do all the training eyes open. You can do your meditations eyes open, and it won't mess up with the algorithm. It's not like there are some algorithms where if you close your eyes, it totally will change the score, and you really need to have it be eyes closed. You can do the whole thing eyes open. And this is at one of the kind of core tenets of the product, which is applied mindfulness. It is great to be able to meditate at home on your cushion. The rest of your life is spent off your cushion. How do we help you translate those abilities so that you can use them the other 23 and a half hours of your day or 23 hours of your day? So that's where, the cognitive challenges come in, where we try to train people to be calm under pressure, apply that mindfulness. Life can be stressful. How do you apply mindfulness in stressful situations? And just train all different types of abilities that you need, right? It's good to be able to meditate well. It's better to be able to live your life well. So how do you get it off the cushion? How do you get people to use this in more real world settings? That's at the heart of what we do.
I love that. You should use that as a tagline. It's good to be able to meditate well. It's better to be able to live your life well.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I couldn't agree more. And I would say that from my testing of this product, that would be my input on where it shines. Mm-hmm. That, I was able to, practice using it during meditation. But when I realized that I could use it eyes open, and I could use it while I was, at my desk answering emails, doing work, and see how calm I was in that, doing those things, mm-hmm. That was where I was really excited about this product. I was like, oh, when we talk about being able to work and live in a flow state, live in this relaxed, calm, awakened state, and this product can actually give some feedback into that and help us train into that. I think that's super exciting to me as a product. And it's fantastic.
The workplace example you just gave reminded me of a research study we just finished. So we're obsessed with research studies. Since the product's launched, we have done 10 research studies. 150 people have gone through our research studies. Teachers, students, professional athletes, several companies looking at workplace wellness. And the results, there are a bunch of common results. The common results are well-being. We use the World Health Organization Well-Being Index to measure well-being before and after 6 weeks of use. And what we found was, if you use Focus Calm 10 or 15 minutes a day, which translates to one program, the program kind of curates the content for you. One program, it's like one workout.
Yeah.
10 or 15 minutes, and you complete 20 sessions. The people who completed 20 sessions, on average, 25% boost in their well-being, 13% reduction in their anxiety. We use something called the State Trait Anxiety Inventory, and a 21% drop in their burnout. And we use something called the Copenhagen Burnout Inventory.
Wow.
Pre-post measures. So we're really about proving that this works too, and testing it in different scenarios. And so we're, tighter and tighter controls as we're doing more and more studies to make sure we really can triangulate the benefit of using this product.
I really love that. I love how you bring in your research background into, doing those types of research studies with this product. And as a coach and somebody who, talks to people about using products like this in order to improve their lives, it definitely is a comfort and a selling point to be able to promote products that, recommend just products that actually have some research science behind them. So I really appreciate that you guys do that. And that's fantastic. A 25% boost in well-being after 20 sessions.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Blew us away too.
Yeah.
It blew us away too.
I mean, seriously. Wow. And let's talk a little bit about flow, because I'm really intrigued by, there's so much kind of popularization of flow, and, Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheal kind of really, and many people, of course, have there's this interesting, in the cognitive well-being, positive psychology, there's so much, promotion and conversation about the benefits of flow. And it seems like this device could be a quantitative measure and trainer of flow. And I'm curious if you agree with that or what you think about that.
Yeah. It's certainly leading edge kind of flow technology, I would say. One of the games in the app called Cave Quest. I don't know if you've used Cave Quest yet, but I'm cautious to say 100% of the time, but it's like almost 100% of the time gets me into some sort of flow state, because it's the right combination of being at ease and an effective challenge that I'm suited to accomplish. So, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is the name of the researcher that coined flow. And if you can think of a graph, right, it is the sweet spot between your skill and difficulty. So you're right at the edge of your own self-mastery. So it's not too easy where you're bored. It's not too hard where you're overwhelmed. It's right in this sweet spot. And it seems like the games like Cave Quest, and there are other games like that in the app, where you have to, I'll describe Cave Quest.
Yeah.
There's a little ship with these little rockets on the back, and you put your finger on the screen, and these obstacles start flying at you, and you have to move the ship to avoid the obstacles. And the obstacles are always changing. Some of them are harder, some of them are easier to get around. But in order to get the rocket ship to go forward, you have to get your mind into a meditative state. So your brain is powering the engines to make the rocket ship go forward on your iPhone or your Android. So that's the calm part. And then the challenge part, or the focus part, is you have to strategically move the ship around to make sure you're avoiding the obstacles. And it's this right combination of relaxation, of calm and focus that gets you into that flow state. And that's what a lot of the programs are designed to do. If not in the game, the result of playing the game when you put the product down. So I can describe it like this. A lot of the programs are built around this 3-step process called learn, strengthen, challenge. So you learn from a meditation teacher, breathing expert like Dana Santis, sports psychologist from Boston University, etc. You learn how to relax your mind. You can see your focus calm score go up while you're learning the technique. Bunch of different techniques in there, so you can find what works for you. The program will then take you to the strengthen phase, where you're playing a neurofeedback game, where you have to flex that mental muscle. You have to get that muscle stronger. And as you get into that state, you'll make a rocket ship fly. You'll help a city start to wake up, and the sun will start to rise the more you can relax your brain. We have one that's like paint by the numbers. This like mural will start to come into focus as you can relax your mind. You can make this bird fly, whatever. All these different ways to strengthen your ability to enter that state. And then the last step is really interesting, the challenge state, where you're completing a memory test, or you're completing a sustained attention test, or you're completing a decision-making test, or you're completing a pattern recognition test. And you have to complete the task accurately while simultaneously remaining calm. And again, what we're trying to transfer is this skill of being calm under pressure, being calm while you have to be on and perform and relax at the same time. And those games are really hard to remain calm while you're doing them. But the takeaway is we want people to be able to move through their life more easily. Even when stressful situations come up, they remember, right, I can do this. There is another way. I can be calm even when life is throwing things at me. I can navigate the ship through the obstacles and still be calm at the same time.
And I know and remember what that feels like because I've trained my brain to do it. Yeah. Beautiful. This is the one device. I have some skeptical teenagers at home who I think a lot of what I do was woo-woo, and I couldn't really talk to convince them to sit down and meditate. But this device, because of the form factor, because of the games, feels like one that I could actually legitimately convince my kids to do. And I think they would actually think like, Mom, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome to hear. That's really validating. You know, what we want is a platform that people can take to, and you don't have to be a meditator to do this. If you're a meditator, I think you're going to get it more quickly, probably, and understand the concepts behind it, and you'll be able to explore more quickly, probably. But you don't have to be a meditator to use this. It's you're training your mind in all these different ways for outcomes that we all want, right? Better well-being, better sleep, better performance. And you can choose what you want to do to train your mind for those different things. So that's really validating to hear.
Yeah. Can't wait to introduce it to them. I'm going to bring it to my family. My family's doing a big reunion birthday party for my dad, and I'm going to bring this, and I'm going to be like, hey, everybody, play with this, because I think you'll really like it.
You should do an experiment. So something that we found, and I won't name names, but people in my family were having trouble getting into that focus calm state.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom came up behind them and gave them a hug. And then you can kind of just see them melt a little, and their score just shoots up. And then we replicated this at a few different COVID-safe family gatherings that we had. And also we've heard reports of people petting their animals, petting their cats or spending time with their animals, and their score shooting up. So it's this quality of relaxing and kind of melting, that nice feeling you get when you get a hug from someone that you love, or petting your cats, and you go into this at ease state. So if you're at I don't know if it would be the right setting or not, but see if calming contact can actually affect other people's brain states. It's just really cool and magical to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And it makes me want to, the scientist would love to have some kind of other measures on those people, like galvanic skin response or other things that might measure coherence, because I'll bet those two people are going into coherence. And, their heart rate is probably dropping, and they're probably increasing their heart rate variability, and, the nervous system is responding. And anyway.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So last kind of question I'd like to close on is, so this, as we've now talked about, I think this device really shines as a way to take your practice off the cushion into life and really learn to be at ease in life, which is that is the goal after all, right? I mean, the goal is living a better life, I would hope. Happiness. But I'm curious for the harder core meditators in the community of Heart Mind Alchemy Lab that are really, working on the deeper samadhi or awakening states, and they might sort of feel like this device has less applicability to them, maybe. And because your population that you were measuring to get the algorithm was not long-term meditators, if you had used long-term meditators as your target sample, then I bet the headband would be training towards different things. And I'm just kind of curious, do you have that in your sights as the future for this product? And how might you address helping people that want to get into deeper meditative states?
Yeah, I would say, as a meditator myself, my favorite thing about the product is being able to apply those skills and play around. I wouldn't use the word test my abilities. That feels a bit too much friction there, but to play around with my meditative abilities. So making rocket ships fly by relaxing your mind and getting to that meditative state is just fun. And then also with the focus games, those are the challenges. Challenging myself to apply these relaxed states. Can I be relaxed during these cognitive demanding tasks? And what can I learn about myself from those experiences? Neurofeedback gives you all these little hidden lessons. Like I was doing some practices with it. My score kept on dropping at some points, and I realized the quicker I can just accept that the faster it will rebound and go back up. But when you're shooting yourself with the second arrow, which is like something bad has happened, and then you criticize yourself for something bad has happened. There's some Buddhist tradition story about you're shooting yourself with the second arrow. And when the score goes down, if you start criticizing yourself, you're shooting yourself with a second arrow. You already got shot, man. Don't do it again. But when the score is going down, the quicker you can accept it, the faster it will go back up. So even, I think that's applicable for a lot of different, people. But to answer your question, we have an algorithm for advanced meditators. Our target population couldn't get a score above 80. So it wasn't going to work for them. Like we couldn't sell this to lots of people that wanted it if they couldn't get their score, above 80. So we have that algorithm. We have our sights set on a few different populations, and how, depending on how things develop, depending on how things develop, we have that in our back pocket, like kind of ready to go, depending on where the push and pull of the market is. But I can see the future definitely holds more personalization and more customization based on who you are, and giving you the type of training that you want or need in that moment. So the short answer is yes, we can do that. And the long answer is it depends on how things continue to develop. I imagine we will eventually get to the point where people have the perfect algorithm right in front of them for the thing that they're trying to accomplish, whether that's deep meditation, whether that's getting ready to give a presentation at work, whether that's falling asleep more quickly. We can deliver on those now, but as the algorithms become more and more refined, I think we'll be able to deliver on them more quickly and help people get what they want, which is, a better life.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. I see so much potential in what you described. I mean, even adding to that, seniors with memory, aging population. I can think of all kinds of test prep for teenagers. I mean, there's so many things you could imagine that you could customize that people would be really excited to use this device.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. That's right.
Great. So that's the future. That sounds like that's sort of the future of Focus Calm. And I'm curious, just closing question, because you have this, incredible background research in this area. I'm curious what you are most excited about in the area of neuroscience research, meditation, awakening consciousness.
Yeah. It's pretty simple. My first thought is pretty simple. It's going to be more accessible. So more people can get these things that otherwise were maybe, hidden in traditions that were harder to access. One of them is there's going to be more people that have put more time in or are more developed in this sense. So, imagine a world where 1% of the population has these kind of higher states, which are really useful for certain things. It's important to say that, like, it's not always good. Like these higher states, and I'm not talking about meditation traditions, I'm just talking about ego development. It's a core tenet in ego development that your stage of development matches the environment that you're in. If you are leading a company, or if you are, let's say, a student learning from a teacher, you don't necessarily need to be have the same perspective taking ability. So it really just matters that your perspective taking ability matches the environment that you're in. But what I do think will be true is a higher percentage of the population will be able to take these higher perspective outlooks on life and themselves and their family and their friends. And this generally leads to better outcomes, more self-awareness, decision-making that's lined up with what people really want. And that typically expresses as more compassion and empathy and understanding, and more fun and more happiness, and longer term thinking. So I think more accessibility, higher percentage of the population, and also it's going to get quicker and easier, not just easier to access these types of technologies or understandings, but I think people will be able to access these things more quickly. And I'll end on this note. one of my favorite analogies to use in all different types of mind training is physical training, like strength and conditioning, because there's so many parallels, and strength and conditioning is so normalized and easy to understand. It's so visible, so quantitative, lifting 5 pounds and then lifting 10 pounds, you're stronger. And there's certain regimens that help people attain strength faster. And it's because of testing and experimentation and more people becoming interested in this that we could say we have more experts in the field. People are getting fitter quicker, more easily because of the development that's happening. And this has happened in contemplative traditions. And I think that the American ethos is technology. And so we're putting our spin on it. We're kind of, I would say, birthing a new tradition that has to do with using technology in the right ways to achieve these outcomes. But with strength training, you do your workouts and you progress in a certain way. And at the beginning, it's easy to progress. And then as you get in these higher states, there's longer plateaus and there's times where you need to rest. And you can learn from these personal coaches who will give you different tricks or tips on how to do things. And the exercise regimens become more fine-tuned and developed over time. And you get stronger and better, et cetera. And so all that is true for what we're doing. You get better at achieving your goal faster. And then the other thing is, a soccer player doesn't lift weights so they can get better at lifting weights. They lift weights so they can get better at playing soccer. And kind of tying it back to what we were talking about earlier, you can meditate to get better at meditation if that's what you want. But like the soccer player, I think a lot of people are meditating so they can get better at playing soccer, which in this analogy is just living the rest of their life. So there's all these kind of beautiful, tangible analogies. But yeah, more accessibility, quicker outcomes, higher percentage of people in the world achieving these states. It's bound to happen.
Amen to that. Yeah, absolutely. That is, for sure, it feels to me like that's where we're headed with technology like this, is making it more accessible so that we're taking it out of the yoga studios and meditation studios, which are arguably a pretty small percentage of the population and not attractive to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And the benefits that we know of meditation, we want them to be accessible to everyone, but everyone is living a better life. Everybody is calmer, relaxed, happier.
Why not?
Why not? Right, exactly. Yay. Why not? I love it. Wow. Thank you so much, Max, for coming on the show, for sharing your wisdom, for what you do, most importantly. You and BrainCo is making an incredible contribution, and hats off to you guys for the incredible work you're doing. So truly.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who's been stuck with us and watching the show, and hope you learned something. And Max, where can people find out more about you or get a FocusComm device? Probably a quick Google search for FocusComm and it'll come right up.
We made it easy. FocusComm.com.
Great.
Yeah, that's the place to go.
All right. Fantastic. And have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And thanks again, Max. And be well. And
thank you.
do good work, as it says.
Thank you.